You don't magically wake up confident. You become confident the moment you decide to stop apologizing for your existence. The truth? Most people are walking quietly through life, begging for permission to take up space. Stop asking, take it. I remember sitting in a room full of people, smiling, laughing, agreeing at all the right moments. I played the part so well you would have thought I belonged. But deep inside, I was folding myself into corners so I wouldn't take up too much space. I wasn't really there, I was performing. And not because anyone explicitly told me I didn't belong, but because somewhere along the way, I swallowed the quiet lie that I was either too much for some people or not enough for others. I started to believe that my real self was inconvenient. It doesn't happen overnight. It's these small, almost invisible moments that cut the deepest. Maybe it was the time you got too excited about something you loved, and someone smirked, as if your passion was embarrassing. Maybe it was when you finally spoke your truth and the room went silent. Maybe it was when you were told you were difficult for simply having boundaries. Maybe it was when you reached out for love and were met with cold distance. It's subtle, but it accumulates. And over time, we begin to self-edit. We stop laughing too loud. We shrink our dreams down to something safer. We apologize before we even make a mistake. We become experts at not being too much. And yet still, we feel like we're never quite enough. There's a name for this. Psychologists call it internalized rejection. It's when you no longer need anyone to exclude you because you've started excluding yourself. You leave the room emotionally long before your body ever does. You start disqualifying yourself from love, from opportunities, from being fully seen. Not because you aren't worthy, but because the story in your head tells you you're not. And it's not just about fear, it's about grief. Grieving the parts of you you've silenced, grieving the dreams you tucked away because someone else didn't see their worth, grieving the bold, beautiful voice you buried under years of trying to be acceptable. But here's what no one tells you. The people who made you feel small, they don't get to narrate your story. They don't get to be the architects of your identity. You do. You are the keeper of your own story. And the moment you decide to walk tall, even when your knees shake, even when the old voices echo in your head, that's the day you begin rewriting everything. It won't be clean. It won't be perfect. It will feel like swimming upstream against years of self-doubt. But every step you take in your full, unapologetic self is a rebellion against the lies that once held you captive. You are not too much. You are not too little. You are exactly enough, and you were always meant to take up space. There's this story we've been sold, that confidence is loud, that it looks like the person who commands the room, speaks the most, laughs the loudest, or walks like the world owes them something. For so long, I thought that's what I needed to become to finally feel worthy, to finally believe in myself. But the truth? That's not confidence, that's performance. That's armor. That's noise. Some of the most genuinely confident people I've met don't need to announce themselves. They don't need to speak over anyone. They don't need to hustle for attention. There's something quiet about them. Not small, solid, rooted. They know who they are, and that knowing sits so deeply inside them that they don't need to prove it to you. They're not performing. They're just present. I remember sitting across from a woman I deeply admired. She barely spoke during the meeting. She wasn't the loudest voice. She didn't interrupt. She didn't try to fill silences. But when she finally did speak, she didn't rush. She didn't over-explain. She didn't apologize for her words. She didn't even look around to check for approval. She just spoke her truth, slowly, carefully, fully grounded, and the whole room leaned in. Because the energy of someone who belongs to themselves is magnetic. You can feel it. Psychologists call this self-congruence. It's when your inner truth and your outer life finally match. It's when you stop dressing up your soul just to fit the room you're in. It's when your identity isn't a mask you wear. It's who you are without apology. But getting there is painful because it means giving up the need to be liked by everyone. It means letting go of the performance. It means sitting in silence when you want to defend yourself. It means risking being misunderstood. And that's terrifying. We're wired to crave belonging, but somewhere along the way, we confused belonging with approval. We thought we had to be chosen to be worthy. We thought we had to be loud to be seen. But real confidence doesn't need permission. It doesn't need applause. It doesn't need a stage. Real confidence is the quiet belief that you are worthy, even when no one's clapping, even when no one's watching. It's the steady heartbeat that says, I know who I am, even when you walk away. I know who I am, even when I'm the only one in the room who does. Confidence isn't something you find out there. It's something you come home to inside yourself. And when you finally get there, you won't need to raise your voice to be heard. Your presence will speak for you. Conviction isn't born in comfort. It doesn't grow in the easy seasons of life. It's forged like steel in the fire of disappointment, heartbreak, and failure. And no one tells you that. No one tells you that the strength you admire in other people usually came from walking through something they never wanted to face. I can still remember the day everything I worked for fell apart. It was a dream I had held onto for years, something I had poured myself into, something I had staked my identity on. And in the blink of an eye, it collapsed. No backup plan, no soft landing, just me, standing there with empty hands and a heart that felt like it had cracked wide open. The immediate instinct was to run, to bury the disappointment, to find something else to chase, something to patch over the wound. But when I sat with it, really sat with the loss, I realized something. The ashes were not the end of me. They were the beginning of a new kind of strength. You see, we are conditioned to believe that conviction comes from success, that if we build enough, win enough, accumulate enough, we'll finally stand firm. But the truth is, real conviction is what rises from the rubble. It's what survives when the things you thought you couldn't live without are gone. Psychologists call this post-traumatic growth. It's not just bouncing back, it's becoming someone you never would have become without the pain. It's when the storm doesn't just pass, it changes you. Conviction is what's left when disappointment burns away your illusions, when you've tasted failure and you decide to stand anyway, when you've loved and lost and you choose to keep your heart open, when you've been underestimated, overlooked, rejected, and you refuse to disappear. It's the whisper that says, I know this matters to me, even if no one else understands. And when you walk with that kind of conviction, the kind that survived disappointment, you become untouchable in the most sacred way, because you no longer need the world's permission to believe in yourself. You've already walked through the fire, and you've already decided you're not turning back. I spent years twisting myself into versions of me that other people would find easier to love. Versions that were softer, quieter, more agreeable. Versions that didn't ask too many questions, didn't set too many boundaries, didn't want too much. I became so good at shape-shifting, that sometimes I didn't even realize I was doing it. I would walk into a room and subconsciously shrink to fit the smallest space people were willing to give me. It took me a long time to realize that this wasn't kindness, wasn't humility, it wasn't compromise, it was self-abandonment. It was a slow, painful betrayal of myself just to keep the peace. The truth is, no matter how carefully you curate yourself, no matter how gently you phrase things, no matter how well you perform, the reality is some people will misunderstand you anyway. Some people will twist your boundaries into selfishness. Some people will label your distance as cold, your honesty as aggression, your confidence as arrogance. And you know what? It's exhausting trying to outrun that. It's exhausting trying to explain yourself to people who've already decided who you are. It's exhausting trying to make everyone comfortable when the cost is your own soul. Psychologists call this approval addiction, the compulsive need to chase validation, to make sure you're always seen as good, kind, likable. But here's the brutal truth. The need to be understood by everyone will chain you to a life that doesn't belong to you. When you start walking with confidence and conviction, when you really start owning your space, you will make people uncomfortable. Some people need you to stay small because it makes them feel safer. Some people need you to be predictable so they don't have to confront their own limitations. Some people need you to dilute yourself so they don't feel inadequate. If you keep waiting until everyone claps for you, until everyone agrees with you, until no one has anything to say behind your back, you will never move. You will stay stuck in a life that was never really yours. You have to walk anyway, even when they misunderstand you, even when they talk about you, even when they pull away, even when they label you with names that don't fit who you really are. You have to walk anyway, because the price of abandoning yourself for the comfort of others is too high. It's the slow death of your spirit. It's the quiet grief of a life unlived. One of the most painful and liberating lessons I've ever learned is this. Not everyone will understand your heart, but that's never been a requirement for you to walk in your truth. Some people will misunderstand you on purpose. Some will misunderstand you by accident. Some will never see you clearly because they only see you through the lens of their own wounds. But the walk, it's still yours. The life, it's still yours. The story, it's still yours to write. And you don't owe the world a softer version of you just to make them more comfortable. You owe yourself the chance to walk fully, boldly, unapologetically in your own direction. There was this moment I will never forget. I was sitting alone in my kitchen late at night, surrounded by the silence that used to terrify me. I had just come out of one of the loneliest seasons of my life. I had lost people. Friends I thought would stay forever drifted away when I stopped bending to meet their expectations. Relationships I tried to hold together fell apart when I stopped betraying myself to keep them intact. Opportunities disappeared when I finally started saying no to what didn't align with who I was becoming. And there I was, alone, wondering if I had made a mistake, wondering if belonging to myself was worth the price of not belonging everywhere else. But as I sat in that silence, I felt something I hadn't felt in years. Peace. Not comfort, not certainty, but peace. Because for the first time, I wasn't performing. I wasn't negotiating with myself. I wasn't chasing approval like oxygen. I was home, inside me, and that is sacred. We spend so much of our lives chasing belonging from the outside, desperate to be invited, desperate to be accepted, desperate to be chosen. But when you live like that, you become a collection of fragments, pieces of yourself scattered across people's expectations, trying to keep everyone else comfortable while slowly losing the connection to your own soul. Psychologists call this true belonging, and it has nothing to do with fitting in. True belonging is when you can stand completely alone, rooted in your own truth, and still feel whole. It's when you no longer need a crowd to validate your steps. It's when you stop asking the world, "Am I enough for you?" because you've already answered that question for yourself. But getting to that place is terrifying. It means disappointing people. It means not being invited sometimes. It means walking away from spaces where you used to be celebrated because you realize the version of you they loved wasn't the real you. And there's grief in that, deep, quiet grief, because you're not just losing people, you're losing the person you pretended to be for them. But there's also freedom, the kind of freedom that doesn't need applause, the kind of freedom that doesn't come with golden invitations. It's the kind of freedom where your soul can finally exhale. Confidence isn't walking into a room thinking you're better than anyone else. It's walking in and not needing to compare at all. It's moving through the world without begging for a seat because you've already built your own table. It's choosing yourself, not as a last resort, but as a sacred, intentional act. Belonging to yourself is the fiercest kind of love because it teaches you that even in the silence, even when you are misunderstood, even when you walk alone, you are still enough, and you always were. When you finally come home to yourself, you realize that the life you were chasing out there, the love, the safety, the approval, it was always waiting for you inside. And that's when you truly walk with confidence and conviction. Not because the world finally sees you, but because you finally do. You don't beg for seats, you build your own table. You don't crave to be chosen, you choose yourself. And the quiet revolution is this: you will walk with confidence and conviction, not when the world finally validates you, but when you finally validate yourself.